The emergency clinic on Station Nexus 7 hummed with the sterile efficiency of galactic standard protocols. Dr. Rilkar, a Veltharian veterinarian whose iridescent scales reflected the harsh overhead lights, stood rigid before the examination table. His four eyes narrowed at the creature before him, a Corinthian warhound all muscle and fury, its 6 legs scrabbling against the metal surface as it snapped at anything that moved. "Impossible," Rilkar declared, his voice carrying the authoritative resonance that had earned him accolades across 3 star systems. "The sedation protocols have failed. The creature is too aggressive. I cannot treat it safely." The Corinthian handler, a battle-scarred warrior named Kexthor, clutched the restraining field generator with trembling hands. "Please, Doctor. Shadowfang saved my unit on Terminus 9. He took a plasma round meant for me. If the shrapnel isn't removed within the hour—" "I understand the urgency," Rilkar interrupted, stepping back from the thrashing animal. "But Galactic Veterinary Protocol 7.3 is clear. When an animal presents lethal danger to medical staff, treatment may be refused. I've administered maximum safe sedation. The creature's physiology is resisting. There's nothing more I can do." The warhound's howl echoed through the clinic, a sound of pain and fear that made even the battle-hardened Kexthor flinch. Blood seeped from the wound on its flank, dark against its midnight fur. "There must be someone," Kexthor pleaded. Rilkar's assistant, a young Telraxian, spoke up hesitantly. "Doctor, there's a human in the xenobiology wing, Dr. Mason. He treats non-standard species." Rilkar's scales rippled with dismissal. "A human? They've been in the galactic community for barely 2 decades. What could a human possibly know about advanced veterinary medicine that I don't?" But Kexthor was already moving toward the door. "I'll find him myself." Dr. James Mason was elbow-deep in a culture sample when his comm chirped. The message was brief, urgent, and came with a security override. 5 minutes later, he stood in Rilkar's examination room, taking in the scene with calm, measuring eyes. He was unremarkable by galactic standards. Average height, no scales or exoskeleton, just soft skin and brown hair graying at the temples. He wore a faded blue jacket over his clinic scrubs, and his hands bore the scars of a lifetime working with animals. "You're the human vet?" Rilkar's tone made it clear what he thought of that designation. Mason ignored the question, his attention fixed on Shadowfang. The warhound was panting heavily now, its movements growing weaker. Mason could see the intelligence in those eyes and the terror. "How long since the injury?" Mason asked quietly. 43 minutes, Kexthor answered. "The shrapnel is near the primary cardiac chamber." Mason nodded, approaching the table slowly. Rilkar moved to block him. "I must warn you, human. This creature has already injured 2 handlers today. Its bite force can crush battle armor. If you insist on this foolishness, I won't be held responsible." "Noted," Mason said, simply sidestepping the Veltharian. He didn't reach for instruments or restraints. Instead, he pulled up a stool and sat down beside the examination table, bringing himself to eye level with the panicking animal. For a long moment, he just watched, his breathing slow and steady. Then he began to speak. "Easy, buddy," Mason whispered, his voice barely audible. "Easy now." The words were human standard English, a language Shadowfang couldn't possibly understand. Yet the warhound's ear flicked toward him. Mason didn't move closer, didn't reach out. He just sat there, continuing to speak in that low, gentle tone. "I know you're scared. I know it hurts. But you're going to be okay. We're going to fix this." Rilkar watched in disbelief as the creature's breathing began to slow. "This is absurd. The animal doesn't comprehend." "Shh," Mason said, still not looking away from Shadowfang. His hand moved with glacial slowness, extending toward the warhound. "That's it, buddy. You're doing great." The clinic fell silent except for Mason's whispered words. Even Rilkar found himself holding his breath. The warhound's eyes locked onto Mason's outstretched hand, close enough now that one snap of those jaws could sever it at the wrist. "Easy," Mason breathed. Shadowfang's nose twitched. Sniffing cautiously, then impossibly, the creature laid its massive head down on the table, allowing Mason's hand to rest gently on its muzzle. Kexthor made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Mason's other hand moved with practiced confidence now, checking pulse points, examining the wound. "Rilkar, I'll need your surgical kit. The shrapnel is accessible from this angle. We can do this right here if we move quickly." Still stunned, Rilkar moved mechanically to retrieve the instruments. The protocols? Sometimes, Mason said, beginning to prep the surgical site while maintaining gentle contact with Shadowfang. Protocols aren't enough. Fear doesn't speak any language we can translate, but it's universal. So is trust. As Mason worked, his movements sure and efficient, Rilkar found himself assisting despite his earlier refusal. The human's hands never trembled, never rushed. And through it all, he kept talking to the warhound in that soft, steady voice. "You're doing great, buddy. Almost done now. You're so brave." 17 minutes later, Mason extracted the last piece of shrapnel and sealed the wound. Shadowfang hadn't moved, hadn't snapped. Though by all galactic veterinary standards, such a procedure without full sedation should have been impossible. As Mason cleaned up, Kexthor approached, traditional Corinthian respect evident in his lowered head. "Dr. Mason, I owe you a life debt." "How can I—" "Just take care of him," Mason said with a tired smile. "That's payment enough." After the Corinthian left with a stabilized Shadowfang on a hover stretcher, Rilkar approached the human. His scales had shifted to a color that indicated confusion and grudging respect. "What you did, it shouldn't have been possible. Our protocols are based on centuries of research across 100 species." Mason packed his portable kit, his expression thoughtful. "Your protocols are excellent, Doctor. But on Earth, we've been working with animals for thousands of years, long before we had advanced technology. We learned that sometimes the most sophisticated tool you have is connection, empathy, trust." He paused at the door. "We humans spent our entire evolution learning to work with creatures that could kill us. Wolves, horses, even creatures we'd hunt, or that would hunt us. We learned to read fear, to project calm, to build bridges across the gap between species. It's not in any protocol. It's just human." As Mason left, Rilkar stood alone in his sterile, protocol-perfect examination room. For the first time in his decorated career, he wondered if perhaps there was something the newcomers to the galactic community could teach after all. Outside, Mason paused to scratch behind the ears of a waiting Felixian pet, whispering once more, "Easy, buddy." And for just a moment, the cold efficiency of the station felt a little warmer.